Thanks for joining, everyone. We'll give it about another 30 seconds or so till we get started. In the meantime, feel free to use emojis. Let us know how you're feeling about needing to update your resume. Quite a mix of emojis in there. Great. Well, we can go ahead and get started. I want to be respectful of your time. Natish, I like your money sign. That's a good emoji for translating your CV into an industry resume. I did want to just take a moment to kind of talk through a little bit about certificates. I'm going to go back for a moment. Again, I want to thank our volunteer program coordinators, Tessa and Jose. They're helping with behind the scenes and tracking our homework and making sure everyone's able to successfully participate in the certificate series. So thank you to both Tessa and Jose. Reminders, I put these in last time as well. Tomorrow this is happening. They're two fantastic speakers and have a ton of experience between the two of them, and they're going to come and help us feel more confident about networking. And so if you have any conferences coming up or mixers and mingling events and you want to know how to confidently go up to somebody, start that conversation and have it be effective, that's their goal tomorrow, is to help you do that. And so feel free to sign up for that, and I'll put links in the chat later if you want to do that. If you can't grab the QR code here, there'll be chips, fruit, vegetables, a couple sandwiches, stuff like that around to have while we're practicing our mingling. Also, if you're interested in science communication and writing, there's going to be a career night panel coming up on May 14. So feel free to check that out. In the chat, y'all are already doing this, so thank you for having a little fun, and hopefully we can get you more feeling like this as we're going through today. Most of you have already done the pre-course homework, so thank you. If you haven't, please feel free to do that, so it counts towards your certificate participation. They're both really good resources to know and have handy anyways, and so it's great to have those bookmarked as you're going through and wrapping up your time here at UCI. If you missed our first session, there is the recording in our shared Google Drive, so please watch that, as that will be important. They're going to come back and build off of their talk as well. Homework due today was to identify 2 to 3 job titles or job descriptions that you might be applying to. And these could be internships too, if you're not quite ready to do a full-time job, if you're looking at internships or whatever it might be. Just an idea, right? You don't actually have to submit to these, just what are you thinking about applying to? And this is going to be helpful for you to know for today. And so hopefully you had a chance to do this between our last session and today, but if not, you can still get it done and turn it in to count for the certificate, but the homework is intended to help with the session today as well. All right, I think that is it in terms of my announcements. Do you all have any questions or things that you want to make sure we talk about before we jump in to resumes? Okay. Well, thanks for those who have their camera on. I appreciate it. It helps get my energy going as I'm going to present. And so I don't know if I officially introduced myself yet. So Lauren Lang Gutierrez, Program Director for GPS STEM. I know some of you might have attended my workshops on resumes before. And so if you have, please be extra participatory in the chat and help answer some of the questions that I'm going to ask. As we go through, especially if you've done a resume type workshop before, bring out your resume, make the edits as we're going through, because I think that's one of the hardest things about workshops sometimes is you learn all the information, but then you need to go and do it and implement it. So try to do it while you're going through now, especially if you are already familiar with some of this material. All right. So I do see some frowny faces, some confused faces, worried faces in the chat. Hopefully, I'm going to demystify some of the concerns. Um, but put in the chat for me. I have the chat open. What are some of the top concerns? Why are there frowny faces, scared faces? What's going on when we're thinking about writing a resume for our upcoming transition? Writing a resume for industry. Why does that worry you? And maybe I can kind of help direct the talk today to respond to some of those. Yeah, the level of tailoring. I'm probably not going to let that make that any better today, but that is a big part. Absolutely, we'll talk more about the tailoring. I like that the Sydney, you put the quote around quotations around work. Yeah, lots of people applying to limited positions, having to be short, sweet, and to the point. The screening process, absolutely. Okay, thanks for putting those in. We will definitely talk through some of these as we go through. And then I'm going to share also resources for how to follow up, how to make appointments with either the Career Center or the postdoc office so that you can continue and hopefully get some of these questions answered if we don't answer them today. All right. Y'all see my screen okay? We're good? All right. Sounds good. So we're going to talk specifically, how do we write a resume for industry, specifically focusing on that grad experience, that postdoc experience. All right. So our goals today is to clarify what's the difference between a CV, what's the difference between a resume, what are they asking for when they are saying we need a CV submitted or we need a resume submitted. We're going to focus on the resume purpose and the formatting and how to tailor that, right? The formatting is key. And then the resources I will provide also at the end. And then we'll also have Jill Wells. She is the new graduate career counselor. She's going to stop by at the end and share how to make appointments with her as well. So very concisely, very succinctly, a CV translates to a story of one's professional and academic life. So it is a full history of everything you've done, basically from grad school on into your professional life, right? And it's anything and everything. And I'm sure you all are more familiar with this document, and it's something that you've probably been building and growing in your time as a grad student and postdoc. But a resume is a snapshot of relevant experience. And that goes to some of the comments in the chat too, the difficulty of being concise, right? The snapshot piece of what a resume is, and relevant experience. So the level of tailoring that needs to happen, and to fully understand what does like work experience mean. How do we effectively put that onto our document when our experience maybe is only limited to being a graduate student or a postdoc? What does that look like, right? And so I think that's where a lot of maybe some stress, some confusion comes in when we're talking about a resume, is in the description itself. It does require a high level of tailoring and understanding of yourself and the jobs you're applying to. So what's included between the documents? CVs can be anything and everything, right? And you're probably familiar with these. Resume, essentially, we can have the same information, right? It's just going to look different and it's going to be presented differently. The items in red, I put there because often these will be included, but they're not going to look at all like they look on a CV. We're not just going to have a conference section and list the conferences we went to or participated in. We're not going to just list our professional service. If I was, a mentor or helped with this conference. It's going to talk about the skills that you acquired while at the conference, those communication skills, right? The service, it could be the program management, the communication, the organization, all of those different pieces that would be the skills are more important here for these, instead of just kind of listing them out like we do in a typical CV. All right, and so we'll give some examples as we go through, but essentially the same information could be on both. So if you have a CV, you have kind of a running log of everything, and that's great. We'll use that as a foundation, but it's going to be presented differently on your resume. All right, so let's dig in. Some common mistakes that we see on a resume are using a template. And I'll talk through why a template isn't good. Too many words, and I forget who put it in there. Is it Cameron? Being short, sweet, and to the point, right? We want it to be concise. And so we're going to not use full sentences. We're going to use action-oriented bullet points. And we're going to make it very clear for the reader to be able to pick up information as quickly as possible, including personal information. So a lot of times other countries will require other information like date of birth, marital status, a picture, all sorts of other information. Please don't include that on your US-based resume. Okay, that is sometimes will get you automatically disqualified for a job because they can't no longer be unbiased with that process, right? And so we need to make sure that that information isn't included. And then using too much creativity, which sounds sad, but it kind of goes back to using a template as well. We want this document to be kind of boring. We want it clean, easy to read. Resumes have a structure that's been around and looks boring, looks kind of outdated. But it's that way because hiring managers are familiar with it. They're able to pick up information quickly, and they don't need to learn the new way that you've formatted your resume, right? And additionally, someone put getting past the screening process. When we have a template or we use a lot of creative items in our setup of our resume, say we're using columns and icons and lots of different things that make it look aesthetically pleasing, sometimes that applicant tracking system on the back end can't read it well. And you're not going to get all the points that you should get when you are submitting that document. And so a couple years ago, the aesthetic resume, the creative resume got really popular. And so we surveyed about 100 employers and we took the same information and we put it into that kind of old school boring resume format. And then we put it into more of an aesthetic creative resume. We sent them both and we asked, which one should our students submit? What should they be submitting to these jobs? And 100% of the people who responded said that they should be submitting that boring old school style resume. Okay, and so they said, feel free to have an aesthetic resume, put that on your LinkedIn, use it for networking, it's fine, but not when submitting for an application online. Okay, so it's easier for the applicant tracking system on the back end to read it and for the hiring managers to be able to succinctly review that document. Okay. Does that make sense for you all? Yeah, okay. So a resume, and this is really important, is a tool to get you the interview. And so someone had said too, right, Tessa, getting past the screening process. That's the whole goal for a resume, is we need to make sure to get past round one. The resume doesn't get you the job. It gets you the interview. And that's when you get to be more elaborate in the way that you describe your skills. You get to have a little bit more free reign of what you're including. But the first round, getting the resume in and having it pass that screening process is something totally different than what you're going to be sharing probably in the interview and the impression you're going to be making once you're kind of face-to-face with somebody. There's kind of key things that we need to get across in our resume to get it through that screening process. Of course, if you can get a referral or somebody to pull your resume out, all the better, right? And we're going to talk about networking next week to kind of help with that process as well. It provides them, again, keyword concise summary, right? And that summary should be very relevant to the job ad. They're going to be scanning your document, knowing what they're looking for, knowing keywords, key skills that they have, education requirements. They want to be able to look at your document and quickly, 1, 2, 3, check off whether or not you should get pulled out of the pile for additional review, right? And then it's going to facilitate the interview. And so I know last week we had conversations with Amy and Quadwo at the end about like, how much do you embellish on a resume? How much can you like add into what you're actually been doing that maybe isn't fully there, right? We want to make sure that anything you put on your resume, you're going to be able to discuss very thoroughly in an interview because they can ask any questions that happen to be on your resume. But we want to make sure that we don't limit ourselves either, right? So quite a what came up out of that conversation last week is that we want to not let the facts get in the way of our story, right? So if you've only done something once, that's fine. Put it on there. Tell them that you did it. They don't need to know that it was only once for 5 minutes with somebody who was advanced doing it, right? They just need to know that you had that exposure and that experience, and that's what we're going to put on the resume. And then during the interview, again, you just talk about that experience, but they don't need to know that it was once limited, assisted by somebody else, right? And so it's all about part of that narrative, and that narrative is going to continue into the interview process. And we'll talk about interviewing with Amy and Quadwo again in week 4. All right, basic format. And again, this is the boring old school style resume. We want our contact information in here. In the chat, can you all kind of tell me what information should be included here? And then as you're doing that, I'm going to kind of talk through the rest here. Summary of qualifications is going to be key, and I'm going to talk about this in a moment. But generally, you are here at UCI doing your education or doing your postdoc because this is going to help you get to the next job. So usually at this point in your career, education will go first because that is one of the driving factors of getting you the position, right? So it doesn't always have to be first. If the position requires a bachelor's, but 5 years, 7 years of experience, and you want to use your experience in grad school, then we can move education to the bottom because it's not the PhD that's getting you the job, it's the experience, right? So we do want to customize even the order of what we're applying to, but generally education is going to go first. Experience, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about this today, but skills section, research and publications, languages, either spoken or technical languages can be on here. Really anything can be part of this, but the bulk is usually your education and your experience. In the chat, I see things like name, address, phone number, LinkedIn, a work number. I see professional email. Yes, absolutely. Wonderful. Yes. So all of that should be in the contact information, and nobody said any kind of too personal information, which is great. But name, address, phone number, and LinkedIn is perfect. You don't have to have location. And so I see a lot of resumes where they have like a full address. Not needed. I don't recommend it. You can put a city and state. Like if you're applying to a position here, like Edwards Life Science, they're local. You want to put that you're in Irvine. Great. Go ahead and put it on if it's going to help you, right? But otherwise, we don't really need location. So city and state at most if you think it's going to help with your application. All right. So it's a question from Zach. Do you list your degrees? For example, John Doe PhD. You don't need to. Up to you. So it's part of your brand. You don't have to include that PhD behind. I wouldn't include, like if you've gotten your master's as part of going through your program for your PhD or your postdoc now and you have that, if that's part of your brand to put that, great. I wouldn't include like you said, John Doe MS if you've received that master's degree and you're working towards your PhD, because that's really not your brand, right? It is a degree that you've obtained, but it's not that brand, and we don't need that there with your name. How do we phrase the summary so not be repetitive? Yeah, applicant tracking systems usually need the location. What would you say in this instance? So the application will usually request that information, your location itself, Nitish. So your application is going to be viewed along with your resume. So that should be okay. It doesn't have to be on your contact information in your resume itself. Okay. And one of the reasons I say don't put your full address, especially as resumes get passed along a lot, right? Or they're shared here and there, or get posted online to LinkedIn or other things. And so it's just a safe practice not to put your full address at least on there. If you want to put your office location, you could do that, but it's really not needed. For the summary, though, I'm going to go back to that question so it's not repetitive. So summary of qualifications here. It's optional, but I highly recommend it. And so this is highly, highly customizable. It's right under your contact information. It's maybe 3 bullet points, and it does exactly what it states. It summarizes your qualifications. And so it's because it is a summary of qualifications and highly customized, you have to fully understand the job ad, right? So you're going to analyze the job ad and say, okay, in 3 bullet points, how do I let them know that I understand what the job requires and that I meet the minimum qualifications. Okay, so you will have things that repeat in a sense. One of your summary of qualifications isn't going to be that you are a PhD student, because that's here, right? But it could be a researcher with 5+ years of project management experience working on X, Y, and Z, right? So that summary does hit on a couple things that are below, but you're pulling different things from different sections of the resume to make it really clear for them right at the top of the document. Does that make sense? So you're not just going to repeat one specific thing, but combining aspects of what they're going to see below in your resume. Zach, you came off mute.
I did. So when I was looking through some of the job applications on LinkedIn, I mean, some people have a extensive list of qualifications. So like, how do you know, are there certain ways to pick out the ones that like people care the most about? Like presumably, yes, something like 5 years of experience in blah is a big one. But are there some other ones?
Yes. So this is going to go to, if you did the homework for this week and you picked out job titles, found a couple job descriptions, this goes to the customization piece. So we're going to analyze the job ad, and I have some examples in the slide deck that we're going to go through. But this summary of qualifications needs to be new and specific for every single resume that you're going to submit. And so the number of times they repeat the skill that they're wanting, both technical, interpersonal, all of those things. So how many times do they repeat it? Where is it placed in the job ad? All of those things are going to factor, and for you to decide which of your myriad of skills you're going to highlight for this job. And remember, this is to get the interview. So even if you're like, well, I'm not even talking about like my number one skill that I think I have, if that skill isn't really listed much on the job ad, we're not going to put it on your resume for right now. Or maybe it's somewhere just really concisely, not really played up on your document. You can talk about it in the interview, right? And spin it of how that skill is going to help you with the others. But for the resume, we're focusing on keywords because we want to get past that applicant tracking system. So that combination of knowing your skills and comparing them to the job ad that you're analyzing. So hopefully that helped. LinkedIn is a different beast. We're not talking about LinkedIn today. So like your LinkedIn profile, you kind of need to have it be general enough to cover a lot of the different things you're applying for, yet specific. And so that's a struggle, and maybe we'll do a future workshop on that to cover. Okay, so the summary qualifications, again, three bullet points, highly customized. And you're summarizing it for them. So that way they don't have to read, okay, this person has a PhD in molecular biology. They've worked in a couple different labs doing X, Y, and Z. They've presented a paper. So maybe they have some good communications. Like, you don't want them to have to go through and read. You are going to tell them in the first quarter page of your document exactly why you're qualified. Okay. All right, so what counts as experience then? What are we including on this document? What do you all think? In the chat, share with me, what do you include in an experience section of a resume? This is probably one of the most common questions I would get as a career counselor. What do I include in that? I've only been a PhD student, right? I only worked as a postdoc since my PhD, and I didn't have industry experience during my PhD. Yeah, research projects, soft and hard skills, internships, presentations, projects that you worked on, the skills you developed during them. Awesome, Chris. Appointed positions and what you did during that. Transferable skills, project management, data handling, analysis, personnel management. Awesome. Yep, absolutely. Right. So experience is a quote unquote in quotes, because it could be literally anything. A resume is not breaking it up by paid, full-time, formal experiences. It's not, this is not your full-time paid work experience section, right? This is just experience. And so anything can truly count as experience. And so everything that was said in the chat can 100% be included in your experience section. And you can break up your experience. I know on, here, experience looks like one big chunk, and you could do it that way, but sometimes what's more effective is to have 2 or 3 different experience sections. And so Zach, you put a couple different things in here too. Like if project management is a key area of the job you're applying to, we can have one experience section here that says project management experience. And we're going to talk about different projects or things we've been involved in that relate to project management. And again, don't let the facts get in the way of the story. If your story is that you have good project management experience, you don't have to have the job as a project manager. But if something you volunteered to do required project management, then great, that's going to be listed here, right? And even if that wasn't the focus of the volunteer position and the service you were doing, if it was an aspect of it, that's all you're going to put here is talk about that aspect of that one experience from a project management lens. Then if we need data analysis, then our second experience section is data analysis experience. And again, we repeat the experiences, but focused on now the data analysis aspect of it. Okay, so you can have multiple experience sections within the experience. Okay, so that is also really key because it's going to help the applicant tracking system be really focused and the human reader, right? If they look at your document, even if they don't read all of the individual experiences you've had, if they just read your 3 headers, they're gonna be like, great, Zach has project management experience, data analysis experience, and blank experience, right? And they don't even have to read the specifics, just the headers. And they know that Zach understood this position of what they were looking for, those core skills, and that he has them, right? So it's 2-faceted. He knows the job and he knows how he is the right fit, right? And has the required experiences. Awesome. I'm looking at the chat here. Research techniques, but also communication written skills. Yes, those are all transferable skills we're going to include. Sydney asked, should this be tailored to the job ad then? Yes, 100% must be. It's a requirement for any job that you submit. It has to be tailored to the job ad. And we're going to go through slides of how to do that. But that's probably one of the most important pieces of tailoring your or creating a resume is tailoring it to a specific job ad. You can have a general resume, but it still needs to be general for a specific field, right? And where I'm going to talk through an example of that as well. Yeah, I can show a summary of experience and I can share some examples too into our Google Drive so that you can see some examples there. Okay. Nitish said, one thing I noticed while applying is left aligned everything, including name and dates, help the ATS systems don't understand blank spaces and indents very well. Yes, so we want everything to be left aligned. You can get too into the weeds with trying to like cheat the applicant tracking systems. So like understand what they're looking for, but don't get too in the weeds. It's tough. Every applicant tracking system is different. Submit your best case document, like your good enough document, doing the best you can, but there's no way to know exactly how to do it. So do one that feels authentic to you, but don't do too much digging into applicant tracking systems. It'll overwhelm you and stress you out and make you sad. All right. So we talked about experience. What do employers want to see then, right? So they want to see clear projects that translate to industry, and you need to be the one to translate it for them. So we do not want them to have to do any inferring while they're reading your document, right? So we need to already lay it out for them specifically how this project translates to industry and specifically their area, right? So we can't have it be too academic, and it needs to be, or it can be more academic, I guess, if it's research focused position and it's asking for those things in the summary, or not the summary, the job ad itself, okay? Otherwise, we need to connect the experiences to the job description. Don't just put everything you can possibly think of. So again, this isn't a CV, it's not a full history, it's a snapshot of relevant information. And so they know that it's not everything you've done. but here are the most relevant things based off your job ad. So transferable skills are going to be key in translating what you're doing now to industry, right? And so these are some of general areas that industry is looking for, right? If we just think of industry as a general category, this is what they want. They want people with these competencies. You are already doing this, right? It's just a different language. And so being able to understand what you're doing now in your work and the language shift that needs to happen for industry. I can go off probably on another hour-long tangent about this, but the most important thing to understand to like, well, how do I know this, is to do informational interviews. Okay, and so reaching out, having conversations with people who are doing the jobs you're interested in doing, working at the companies you want to work at. They have already made this transition. They are now in this world and they use this language, and they can help you understand where that shift and that transition has to happen. And so that's going to be the most important thing to do while you're applying to jobs, job searching, tailoring your resumes, prepping for interviews, is to talk to people who are already in that role. So another piece we want to use is action verbs. So transferable skills and action verbs. And I can upload into our Google Drive action verb lists for you. I always have them up to help me think of the different things that I could utilize. Like there's 50 words to talk about communication skills, right? And so looking through the different action verbs to highlight communication skills will also help you think of the things you've done that might be helpful for a specific resume. All right, so then how do we decide which of those transferable skills to highlight? How do we decide which of the experiences we're going to include on our resume? And step one comes with the job ad. And so hopefully you all did the homework from last week and you found job ads or job titles that you're interested in. We need that first before you can really do a resume, right? And so this is oftentimes people will try to create a resume before they start applying to jobs, which you do need to have like a draft, but we can't finish our resume until we have a job in hand, right? So we need to look at the placement of skills in the ad. If it's placed at the top, if it's listed multiple times, all of those things are going to factor in. And so you want, and I mean, honestly, use AI for this too, right? Copy and paste a job ad and say, what are the top listed skills? How many times are these skills listed, right? Like have it do the work for you for that piece. Look at the company. So what is their mission? What are their core values? And how and where do you fit into that? Because your document could be very similar. Like say we're applying to a data analysis position at company A, and they are all about independence and autonomy, creative thinking, and all of those types of buzzwords. But then company B data analysis position, which kind of requires the exact same education, exact same skills, that company is all about mentorship and teamwork and collaboration and other areas, right? And we're doing work to save the planet and to do all that, right? Then we want our tone of voice and our resume to match. We can't submit the same resume to those two positions, even though they're almost identical in their qualifications. The language and the tone of voice of your resume needs to match the company overall as well. And then your self-assessment, right? So what skills and experiences qualify you for this job? And what specific achievements do you want to highlight within that document? Okay. So let's kind of go through that. So these are some basic examples, but these are things that I frequently see. So I will see bullet points. You will list on your resume in your experience section, graduate, student researcher, or teaching assistant, or whatever your kind of formal title is as a grad student or postdoc. And I will see this bullet point under your job title, right? Think about a data analysis position. Think about a project management position. Think about a science writing position, right? What does this tell them? When you're either the AI is reading your document or the human reader is reading this, what does this tell them? What do y'all think? What are they seeing? What are they inferring? What are they doing when they see this bullet point listed under your TAing experience? Yeah, not a lot. Thanks, Olivia. Critical thinking, bland, right? Like you aren't going to be grading exams and papers for them, right? And so they're just going to move on and they're not going to see your teaching experience as relevant. And so that whole section of years of experience that you potentially were doing now just becomes kind of void, right? And so again, this is going to depend on your job analysis, your self-assessment, what skills we're trying to highlight, but we can just change the language, right? Evaluated performance and provided feedback for up to 30 students per quarter. It's still teaching-based related, right? But we're telling them we have these other skills. And I would assume this job is requiring you to be some type of evaluating performance of doing some type of work like that. Right? And we can get more specific if we have a job ad and some skills, right? And we're going to do a job ad example. But we just need that shift. We need an action verb. We need a competency that's being highlighted, and we need to quantify if possible. Okay, so same thing here. Held office hours with students, right? I think you could probably say same things, right? It's not saying a lot, it's bland. And again, you're not going to hold office hours. And so you're making the AI and the human reader make inferences, right? You're making them say, okay, well, if they held office hours, then they must X, Y, and Z. And they're never going to do that. All right. You have to do that for them. You have to tell them why you holding office hours is important to them. So we can change it. Coached students individually, resulting in increased comprehension of material and improved performances, right? So you want this to be your structure of your bullet points, not your job duty, right? These are your job duties, your tasks, but we need it to be skill-based and more specific.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You had sort of broke down that first sentence into three portions, which I was gonna ask about the quantification. Like even in grants, I've been told to reduced budget by 25% or something, right? But you had also mentioned some other components.
Yes. Let me see if I can just type it up quickly. So you need an action verb and a competency that you're trying to highlight, right? And you need that to be part of your skills. And then you need the result, the purpose, or the accomplishment of it. So I think I have some typos in there, but you'll get my drift in the chat. So it's an action verb that's highlighting the competency you want to get across. And that goes from your job analysis and understanding what you're wanting to put in front of this employer for this specific job. Highlight those skills within that bullet point. And then what happened? Why did you do this? What was the result or what was the purpose? And so as scientists, y'all always freak out at me when I say results because you're like, I don't have results yet. Like I'm not that stage. Results can be like what Zach was saying too, like, oh, we're just increasing the efficiency of a tiny process of something, or we are doing something as part of the process. It doesn't have to be the actual result, right? But you took this one step, which resulted in this one result, or the purpose of why you were doing that, right? If you really don't have a result. And then within there, we try to quantify as much as possible. Applicant tracking systems love quantifications. Human readers are drawn to the quantifications as well. And so if we can, put it in there. All right. So responsible for all aspects of editing, writing, and reporting for university paper. This is your job duty again, right? This is not the skills. So there are probably, and I'm not even exaggerating here, there are probably 30 bullet points that we can come up with that talk about these things, right? And you just condensed it down into one bullet point that doesn't highlight a specific skill or competency area, right? And so obviously it would depend on which area we want to go again, right? But we could turn this into interviewed sources, researched and wrote and copy edited average of 3 stories per quarter. You're breaking down those huge tasks, those huge job duties for the reader so they can see it. And you're painting that picture of what exactly you were doing so they can see you doing that now for them. Okay. So a lot of times we're almost devaluing our experience by having it be too big, too general on our resume. We need the specifics, okay? And that's a really important piece. We need specifics, not details. Okay, and I know that can be confusing, but what specifically did you do? But don't weigh me down with a ton of details about it. Okay, so probably the content here, maybe not very relevant, or that it was for a certain audience, maybe not relevant, right? Like what details do they need to know? But don't bog them down with too much. Give them the specifics that they need. Okay, so quick recap. It's a snapshot of relevant information. Should be 1 to 2-ish pages because that is the concise document. For PhDs, for postdocs, 90% of the time, it should be a 2-page resume. Okay, 1-page resume is rare for somebody at your level. That is an undergrad, that is someone with no experience. You as a PhD scientist have 5+ years experience already. And your narrative needs to be confident saying that. Your grad experience counts as experience. Okay, so please keep telling yourself that and make sure it's coming across in your document as well. And highly customized per the job ad. So, and hopefully this will be an easy question for you. What does a grad resume experience focus mostly on? What are we focusing on our resume? Anybody want to take a guess? Accomplishments, right? Research, skills, research, presentation, publications, great, expertise. All of those things, but focused on the skills of those things, the transferable skills of all of those. So, and this is sometimes really, really hard for PhDs to kind of swallow, is that sometimes your exact research topics, I know a lot of you said research, might not be all that relevant for the job ad. And so on your grad resume for a job, if your exact niche area isn't that aligned with what you're going to go do, you might even really talk about your research topic in your resume. And that's hard because it's been such a high focus for you for so long, but it's the skills you developed while doing that research that are important to the employer. Right? And so that's the specifics of what you were doing in your research, but not the details. And so you have to kind of make up that decision when you analyze a job ad. Was my research, my niche area, is that important to them? How much is important? Can I translate it so it's not so jargony and they understand that it's still within this really important realm of their focus and their company, but not weigh us down with too much of the jargon. Okay. So transferable skills are portable skills, crisp but marketable skills, right? They can be used across industries in a variety of jobs, right? And it's things like communication, right? And so you have communication skills, you do active listening, you write, you give presentations, you have confidence in your ability to deliver a message to different types of audiences, right? You give and receive feedback. You have nonverbal communication, your responsiveness, public speaking. There are so many aspects that go into just communication, right? And so we don't want to say I'm just a good communicator, but what makes you a good communicator, right? And really understanding those skills at a more specific level. Okay, so writing about it, and we kind of already talked about this, started to talk about it, but start with the duty or task. So start with the fact that you were holding office hours, that you were grading papers, right? And then identify that skill, the competency, that knowledge area that you want to highlight. And that's that first part of that bullet point that I put in the chat. Then ask yourself who, what, where, when, why, and how. Okay, so who was I doing this with? What specifically was I doing while grading exams? Where was I doing this? When, how often, why? And that will help break down, and then you can start to quantify those pieces. And then we structure our bullet point, right? And so that's what I put into the chat there. So once you gather all that information, like I said, with that one like example with the writing the university paper, again, I'm not exaggerating, we could come up with 30, probably 50 bullet points from that one, well, not one, they included like multiple components of a job duty into one bullet point. And so we want to break it down to have all of these different areas covered. Okay, so you all have already answered this. We're going to go into a specific example for transferable skills. So let's talk about a publication, right? You had a task, so your job duty is to do a publication, right? One of the tasks as part of getting to publication is a literature review. Skills that we want to highlight from this literature review are collecting data, synthesizing, communicating that data and that synthesization to others, right? And then we can talk collected, organized, and synthesized data from over 20 peer-reviewed journals and presented a consolidated analysis to a multidisciplinary research team to inform research gaps and develop a clear research idea. So you don't want to say published 3 papers on your resume, right, under your graduate student research experience. You want to say this, because that job ad that you analyzed wants these specific skills, right? Does this make sense? Okay. It takes work and it takes practice. It's not easy. I'm not going to lie to you. It takes practice. Okay, let's try again. So TA, that's your job duty. You are facilitating class or leading groups. Skills that you want to highlight: leadership, training, development, personnel management, right? Facilitation, DEI. We want to facilitate all of those. So your bullet point then becomes oversaw training and development of 25 plus diverse students per class, ensuring equitable access to resources and learning while facilitating large and small group discussions and maintaining a positive learning environment. So this is going to highlight, it's going to pick up those keywords and trigger more, right, than just saying facilitated class discussions, right? We need to get into the kind of the weeds of the job ad and dig in and say, okay, what are those specific skills and how can I do that? TAs are like my favorite thing to write bullet points for, because there are truly endless amounts of competencies that you have to develop and utilize while being a TA, right? So we can highlight so many things. And I see people when they come in and bring resumes, they don't even include their TA because they're like, oh, well, I'm not going to be a teacher. Like that my job doesn't include teaching. You're missing the point there, right? It's what skills did you develop as a TA that are now useful for this new job? And so we need to really analyze that aspect. So here is, if you don't take anything else from the talk except for this, this is one thing that I really, really want you to do, is that I want you to find 5 jobs. I think part of the assignment was to find 1 to 2 jobs, find a couple more, right? So that way we have kind of a group of job titles that you're interested in. Analyze those 5 job ads. Use AI to help you with this, right? Of these 5 job ads, so these are the 5 things that I'm interested in, the 5 jobs that I would like to apply for, might be interested in one day. What are the keywords? What are the skills, the technical, the hard, the interpersonal, the team dynamics? Like I said, is it someone where you have to be autonomous and work independently, or is it a company that wants teamwork and collaboration? Then create your list of core competencies and skills and knowledge areas for the jobs that you're mostly interested in, right? This is going to help you know how to start telling your story and craft your narrative that's going to be part of your resume. The jobs that I'm mostly interested in want these skills, these areas of competencies. This will also help you identify skill gaps. So if you're like, ooh, the jobs I want really want this aspect, they really want strong leadership skills and I haven't had much, let's try to find some leadership opportunities in the last couple months or last year of your time here so that we can add that on, right? Then we want to develop what's kind of called a core resume. This is an internal document just for you. Nobody else sees it. You don't submit it. You don't worry about page numbers. It could be 5, 6, 7, 8 pages long. And that is like that university paper example where you would create 10, 15, 20 bullet points for that one position based off of this list, right? If you've created a list and you know these jobs want adaptability, they want good communication skills, they want knowledge in Python, they want whatever it is, start creating 10, 15, 20 bullet points for each of your experiences that highlight those specific competencies. So that way you end up with this bank of bullet points that are highlighting those competencies that you know the jobs you want to apply to are going to ask for. And then when you go to customize your document, you're just going to copy and paste, right? Okay, this job specifically is really, really focusing on these core areas. Then let's pull those in from our core resume and create the customized one. You might still have to do some tweaking, but it's going to help and make that process a little bit faster. All right, so we kind of already talked through this piece, and I'm going to go through this quickly. I see our guest is here too, so I want to be respectful of her time. But this is how you would do this. This is a job ad, and it always starts with paragraphs. People always skip over this. Don't skip over it. Read it. This is important. It tells you, again, that voice that your resume should be written from, right? And then you'll see the qualifications. Okay, so we're going to go through and we're going to ask, am I qualified? Do I meet 50% of the requirements? Am I remembering to count in my transferable skills when trying to decide if I meet the requirements? Okay, we're going to look at the job ad. We're going to do an analysis of it. We're going to look at the company, make sure that we understand the voice, and then understand how does my career narrative align with this position, this company, and what skills do I need to highlight? So we go back through and we highlight, these are the things that are standing out to me in this job posting. And again, this is that first paragraph that's usually as part of a job description that you're skipping over. There's a ton of information in here that is going to help us with our analysis, right? And then we're going to go through, I have these things. I have worked directly with, maybe not customers, but I've worked directly with other people who are part of that. I have that interpersonal experience working with people. I have analysis skills. I have policy experience. I have partnership development, whatever it is. You're going to go through and highlight the things that you match up with and align with that company. Same thing here. These are the things that they're looking for that stood out to me as I read the job description. Here are the things that I have, right, and that I want to highlight in my resume. Make a list, right, and say, okay, the company, they want to be world leading. Their goal is safe and secure. They're solving daunting challenges. That's going to help you with that voice. Here are the things that I have that their overall job description talks about, and of the qualifications, here are the qualifications that I have. Okay, so you're going to do that for each and every resume that you're tailoring, right? So then you go to your resume. We have the content. Am I formatting it so it's easy to read for both the applicant tracking system and the human reader, right? Is it top to bottom, left to right? Kind of like Nitish said, we need a specific format. And I'm going to put examples into our Google Drive so you can see those. Do my projects, do they give specifics but not go into too much academic detail? Am I incorporating the transferable skills, right? The bullet points, do they begin with the action verbs? Do they discuss the purpose and the result? And then again, this is like listed 10 times on the resume. Did I incorporate the skills? So again, it's not necessarily about giving the presentation or being a researcher. It's what skills from those things did you learn that we can incorporate now? Okay. I'm gonna pause here because I want Jill to be able to share about some resources and her services available. So I'll pass it over to you, Jill. Thanks for coming.
Sure, thanks for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Jill, and I work at the Division of Career Pathways. I am a graduate school advisor. I just transitioned. I have been working, oh, thanks, Lauren. I've been working with the Division of Career Pathways for about 8 months now. And prior to this, I worked at Caltech and USC. So I love working with grad students. I wanted to let you know that you guys can make appointments with me. I work Monday through Friday. I'm in the office on Wednesdays and Thursdays, so I could do in person if you wanted to. But if you're like me, you probably prefer virtual because it's just more convenient. So you can go on to Handshake and schedule an appointment with me at any time. And I'm just going to share my screen really quickly so that you can see. Oh, so that you can see my Can you make me a co-host, Lauren?
You should be able to screen share now.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So that you can make an appointment. I will tell you that this is actually from my view. When I tried to go in and do it as a student, it not take it for some reason I was having issues. But in your handshake, you can go to a new appointment and it'll ask you for appointment type. And what should be here is like undergraduate, master's, graduate. So you can choose either like a graduate student career planning and advising, which would be a 45-minute appointment. And right here, you could put your staff member preference. You'll see that I have actually 2 appointments today that are open. I have some on Thursday and Friday. This is for PhDs, but I also do them for masters. And then you could do a grad student or resume or CV. And Max, who is a doctoral student in psychology, he's a peer educator. He also takes appointments and he's great at what he does. So you can go see him for a resume review or a CV review. He's done both of those and he has them. So that's how you would schedule an appointment. I'm assuming you guys know about Beyond the Professoria and all the things that we offer at the careers at DCP. Yeah. Okay, great.
Yes.
If you have any questions, I'll put my email in the chat. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. Yeah. Anything else? Oops.
I don't think so. I just wanted them to have a face to the name and have them understand that they could come out and reach you. We're doing resumes today, but we're also going to be doing interviews and other stuff throughout the series. And so Jill's available to help through all aspects of the career exploration process. So please make her a familiar face to all of you as you're going through. But yeah, thank you, Jill. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, have a great day, you guys.
Bye, Jill.
Bye.
And yeah, Mina discussed too in the chat, postdocs don't have access. And so I do have in the slides information for postdocs. So Kaylee Anderson-Natali does resume reviews for the postdocs through Grad division, fellowship reviews, lots of other things. So I'm going to put her information into the chat, and her information is also in the slide deck. So you can grab it there too if you can't grab it from the chat right now. But she does in-person advising in the GPSRC. So you can make appointments with her if you're a postdoc. So grads, you have access to Division of Career Pathways, and postdocs, you have access through Grad division. Okay. I know we covered a ton of information, and I'm going to add in resources to our Google Drive, sample documents, the slide deck, all of that. But I appreciate you coming. I'm going to share my slides one more time. I know we have 60 seconds left. I appreciate you sticking around. But I want to ask you if you can put into the chat, what would be one key takeaway from today? So what was your main takeaway from the session today? And I think that's helpful just for others to see as well, and kind of reiterate some of the hopefully the seeds that were planted. Be specific, tailor resume, core resume, yay, thank you. That would be the one thing. The most helpful advice is honestly to create that core resume. It's a lot of work up front and is going to save you a ton of time as you're applying to jobs. It's stressful applying to jobs. It's another full-time job to submit applications once you're at that stage. And so to have that core resume is going to be extremely helpful. All right. Week 2 homework is going to be to find or create your resume. So dust it off if you haven't used it in a while. Try to add in your new experiences. I don't expect to have the 30 bullet points or not, but at least have the document started and going with at least your current education and your current positions on there, and submit your resume before next session. And then I think that's it. So that's all for my updates. Please don't hesitate to let me know what questions you have. If you want to stick around too, I can stay for some Q&A. But as you're going through the certificate series, if you have questions on what's required, what homework is due, let me know. Resume could be its own 6 weeks course. And so this was a 1-hour crash course on it. And so I know that you'll probably have questions. You can also just reach out to me to utilize Jill, please utilize Kaylee. That's their whole job, is to help you with this. And so take advantage of that. And you can always reach out to me as well with questions. Okay. But I know you all got to go. So thank you. Again, I'll stick around, but I look forward to seeing you all next week. All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Lauren. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
So I do have a question, if you don't mind sticking around.
Yeah, go for it.
I think this kind of blends in from the last lecture that we had too, where I think, a lot of people are, including myself, are concerned about applying for jobs we don't feel quite qualified for. And I do understand the idea of if you've done something once, like you're not just going to be thrown into the fire. Like there's opportunities to have been exposed to it and then sort of rekindle that knowledge when you're there. But like you mentioned 50%, like, is that kind of like a routine metric of like, okay, I fit 50% of the minimum requirements and that should make me a good candidate?
Basically. So a
Okay.
job description, like a job ad, is essentially your job description. And so when I talked with employers about like how should we be taking the job ad, right? They're saying this is your job description, and they don't expect you to have 100% of the requirements. Because if you did, like if you had already done 100% of the requirements, then essentially you've already been doing this job and you're going to be ready to move on, right? Like, so in their mind, it's best for retention if you do have a little bit of a learning curve, if you've been exposed and right, like, and Python just comes to mind because I just mentioned it, but like if you were exposed to Python like once in a class, but you haven't really done it, right, but the job requires it, you're still going to be able to pick it up and learn it faster than someone who has zero exposure, right? And so they need to know that, and you need to put on there that you have utilized and you had exposure with it. And then your learning curve is going to help you stay there longer because you're going to have to learn, right? And they're also to teach you the way that they want you to utilize it their way, right? And so employers have said time and time again, you do not need 100% of the requirements. We want there to be a learning curve, and we want to teach you our way. That doesn't mean that there aren't super competitive companies and positions that people would just take anything to get in, right? And it's going to be way more competitive. But from a general perspective, 50 to 60% of requirements, you should feel confident applying.
Okay. I really like that perspective of like job retention, training. Yeah. So that's an interesting perspective I haven't considered before. So
yeah.
Okay.
And of course, the networking, the informational interviewing, the reaching out to people. I mean, that's still going to be a better way to get a job than the most tailored resume is great. But if you could get someone who's referring you or pulling your resume out of the deck, you're going to have better chances that way too, right? So
okay. Gotcha. And then are there like statistics that you're aware of? Like, I don't know, that people say like, oh, hiring managers will spend at most 2 minutes on your resume, right? So they're skimming it real quick. It's
6
what?
seconds.
6 seconds?
Yeah, that's the latest one. The latest, I think it was last year, came out, the National Association of Colleges and Employers. Their research showed that it was about 6 seconds that people were looking at.
So their eyes are really just darting to like words.
And that's why you can't have just like an experience section with like everything listed. You have to break it down so that they can just read the headers. And that's why that summary of qualifications is really good, because they can read through that in 3 or 4 seconds. It's so important to have it customized, because they're not going to spend the time making any inferences. They need to see exactly what it is that they're looking for.
Gotcha. And then at the
why
beginning,
the boring format is important. The boring format, because if you have an aesthetic document, it's going to take 5 of those seconds to understand where they should be looking.
Yeah, that's completely fair. I'm sure it's like, you train someone one way. It's like, when they update an app and one thing moves one place and you're like, you keep pushing the same location.
Yeah.
That's why I never change my home screen on my phone. But so actually, speaking of that template, like one of the mistakes you said was not to use a template, but like, so is that to say that
using a template is the mistake?
Yeah, using the template, but you said they want to see the same template, that old-fashioned one. Oh, the format. Okay.
Same format, but don't use a template, because some of the AI, like the tracking systems, and I assume it's getting better, but some of the AI will literally read everything that's on that document, including like the coding behind the template. And so all of that extra information from the template is getting thrown in to your application, and none of that is relevant and important, and it's going to reduce your score. And so it just wants a plain text document or PDF or whatnot that doesn't have all the extra like icons and aesthetically things or whatnot. And then also a template is just because a document has to be so highly customized, a template, it just gets annoying because you don't have the freedom to do as much editing as easily as you do if it's just a plain text document.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Okay, got it. So it's not template, but keep to the format.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And the format being what you would just describe: contact, summary, education, like that order of events.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's most of my questions. I
Okay.
guess I was going to ask if you have any examples of
Yeah, I'm gonna
like,
put some in there.
okay, great. Then in that case, maybe that's it. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. I appreciate all the knowledge.
Yeah, of course, Zach. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
All right.
All
I'll see you
right.
around.
Yep. Bye.
Bye. Hey, Tish, how are you?
I just wanted to thank you, Lauren. Nothing more, because these exercises have been so helpful. I feel I just have been doing this resume thing for a long time now.
Yeah, you have been.
It is exhausting, and
It
I
is.
think the single most important thing is having that core resume. I think helps, just because you can play around a little more, and it's all about keywords. I feel
It
the
is.
keyword for the AI system, keyword for the recruiters, keyword for only after it goes, like say, to the hiring manager,
Yeah.
then they really start talking about experiences and all that culture stuff as well.
Right. Right. Exactly.
One
It's
thing
tough.
I wanted to ask is there's a lot of helpful interview preparation resources for just general behavioral interview. Do you happen to have anything like specific for like coding interviews here at UCI?
I actually just heard somebody who is going to do this. I can't remember who. Let me think about it. I feel like someone was going to put on an event specifically for like a technical / coding type of interviews.
I see.
So it must not have been finalized yet, because otherwise I would have like the flyer and information. But I think someone's going to do a workshop and invite some speakers. And then DCP does have usually employer speakers a few times a year come in and do workshops on that as well.
Yeah.
And like you can go and like Google has like YouTube videos on how to prepare and do their technical interviews, their coding interviews. Like they have step-by-step process of like, this is how we want you to do our interview. And they'll walk you through like samples and things. So utilize those resources too, especially those big companies. They want good candidates because they get thousands of people apply that they don't want to sit through people who aren't prepared. So they try to like give as much information as possible out there to the public so that you can be a good candidate for them.
Yeah, definitely. I was thinking maybe for potential future ideas. One thing that I especially is considering that the tech job market is super challenging nowadays. I feel just having transition series like this, I mean a workshop series, but spread out through the quarter. I feel 10 weeks having one event is not sufficient, honestly. I mean, it's good to get an introduction and an overview, but it's really that long drawn effort which is needed. So I'm happy to talk to you more about some ideas that I had. I piloted some of the ideas with the AI club
Okay.
last summer, so it was good. Timing is also important, so I'm happy to talk about the ideas that
Okay.
later.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's chat. Let's put something together.
Awesome. Yeah, take care, Alan. Bye.
All right. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.